richest in 1945 was 94%. It's now 35%. President Obama is expected to tell the American people tomorrow that taxes for the rich cannot stay low if we're going to solve our debt problem. Speaker Boehner has already responded with this tweet. Tax increases are a non-starter.
Does the president feel that the Ryan plan is fundamentally unfair?
Yes.
I'm not kidding you. I'm serious. They want to lower tax breaks for millionaires.
The president prepares a counter to the next Republican budget.
President Obama and his senior staff are putting the finishing touches on a response to the Ryan plan.
President Obama calling for tax increases for the rich.
The president's going to make that case tomorrow. Could you smile? Yeah.
You can't have a balanced budget without tax increases. It's like trying to put together a peanut butter and jelly sandwich without the jelly. And everybody knows the good parts of the jelly.
We just don't fund our government agencies like that they need to be funded. So more Air France jets can whack over little teeny planes.
But Republicans and Democrats are still figuring out just what was in the last deal.
Eric Cantor, he would not guarantee that this could pass with Republican support.
The EPA getting cut by $1.6 billion high-speed rail, AIDS prevention, a defense increase, though, that was the plus side.
People from the left saying the president gave away way too much, $504 million cut to the Women, Infants, and Children's Nutritional Fund.
Well, it's unbalanced, and in that sense, the Democrats did give up too much.
The president is also being asked to take on gun controls.
The man who killed Gabe and 5 others shot 31 bullets in 15 seconds. And that is what happened on January 8th. This type of tragedy cannot be allowed to happen again.
And the Republican presidential contenders are just asking for some attention.
Timing is certainly interesting for Mitt Romney.
Brave? Some might call it a political mistake.
Are Democrats trying to take health care off the table for 2012?
Are you asking that with a straight face?
Let Mitt have his day.
Look who bounced Sarah Palin as the bright, shiny object dazzling Republicans.
Not Romney, perhaps, but I think the Republican Party likes very much that I'm running.
Apparently, all you need to do in the GOP these days is repeat the birther line, and the suckers will love you.
Good evening from Washington. I'm Chris Hayes, in for Lawrence O'Donnell. The big question coming out of the compromise negotiations that averted a government shutdown was what actually got cut. Today, we got our answer. The bill, with all the nitty-gritty details about the $38.5 billion in cuts, was posted online at 2 a.m. As for the most high-profile issues, Planned Parenthood and the EPA, Planned Parenthood avoided a complete defunding that would have come courtesy of the Pence Amendment. But the Title X program, which supports women's health centers, including Planned Parenthood, had its budget cut slightly from $317 million to $300 million. The Environmental Protection Agency fared worse, much worse. Its budget was cut by 16%, mostly from programs that protect against polluters. And there were cuts to the usual conservative targets like foreign aid and AmeriCorps, a national service organization which counts, interestingly enough, Michelle Bachmann's son among its ranks. On Thursday, the House of Representatives will vote on this agreement to fund the government until September 30th, when the fiscal year ends. The bill is expected to pass the House with a margin likely provided by Democrats, who had thus far been quite tepid about the $38 billion agreement. They may, however, feel a bit better about the deal President Obama brokered after seeing the details today. Because the fact is, this deal cuts less than $15 billion from discretionary spending. The other $23 billion that is a cut is number shuffling, like taking back $6.2 billion in unused 2010 census funds and $3 billion in highway money that hasn't yet been spent. Let's put the $15 billion in discretionary spending cuts in context. Discretionary spending is about $1.4 trillion, which is only about a third of all the money the U.S. will spend in 2011. $15 billion is 1% of the discretionary spending. The dramatic standoff that almost shut down the federal government was fighting over cuts to 1/3 of 1% of what we'll spend overall this fiscal year. That is not to diminish the actual impact of any cut to any individual program or agency. The government is about services and not about ledgers. The $786 million in first responder grants, which this bill cuts, may only be 2% of the Homeland Security budget, but it can fund a whole lot of firehouses. And most Americans care most about the funding just one: the one in their neighborhood. The point is, this budget deal does very little to improve the nation's fiscal situation, and it manages to do quite a bit in terms of the programs and jobs and cuts for programs and jobs that help an awful lot of people. Joining me now to discuss this are two House members on opposite sides of the aisle, Democratic Congressman Raúl Grijalva of Arizona, the chairman of the Progressive Caucus, and Republican Congressman Joe Walsh of Illinois, a member of the Tea Party caucus. Congressman Walsh, I want to start with you. Given that the figures have come out today that a fair amount, if not the majority of these cuts are essentially accounting cuts, do you feel like you got rolled? Do you feel that Boehner got rolled in these negotiations?
No, and you know what, Chris, I've been pretty clear from the outset that I want us to be bold. I want my Republican leadership to be bold. But look, from a negotiation perspective, when you look at this compromise, the Republicans won. Let's be frank. The president didn't want to cut, period. He called for a freeze. He actually called to increase non-defense discretionary spending $40 billion this year. I'm not happy with it. I wish it went further. But as a straight negotiation, the Republicans won this, and I would argue the American people won because, Chris, it's not enough for me, but they sent us here to cut, and this is a pretty good first step.
Congressman Grijalva, given that you've had a chance to look over the cuts today, I'm wondering if you're planning to vote yay on this on Thursday when it comes up.
No, I'm not. I'm going to vote no. As I've called it, the vote to keep the government open for 5 days was the undercard until you receive details. And the details are distressing for many reasons. But I think the most distressing part of it is the template that's being set. A template that says, you know, we're going to push fairness down the scale. We're going to put jobs down the scale. We're going to transfer debt and taxing to the middle class and those who aspire to be the middle class. And we're going to take care of the 2% that take care of the Republican Party. We're going to make sure they're covered, the corporations are covered. And so, you know, I think this vote that we have in the continuing resolution is a precursor to the vote on the Ryan bill and a vote on the debt ceiling.
Congressman Walsh, Congressman Grijalva brings up the question of fairness and of distribution. And I'm very curious. The Tea Party doesn't tend to talk about this. Members of your caucus tend not to talk about this. When you look at the composition of the cuts, you see $600 million taken away from community health centers, $500 million taken away from the WIC program. Does it matter to you how these cuts are composed? Does it matter to your colleagues in the Tea Party caucus that the strain is going to be felt the most by people at the bottom of the social pyramid?
Look, Chris, it does, but understand something here. This is step one. We're all in this together, and everybody's got to put something on the table. Am I happy with each and every cut? No, but it is so important. What's not fair